Your phone vibrates. A short message. Sorry, I'm really busy this week. You've seen this movie before. In the beginning he seemed different. Kind of present. Genuinely interested. But something shifts. It always does. The replies get slower. Plans quietly disappear. You try to be mature. You tell yourself not to overreact. Not to seem anxious. Not to ruin something that might still work. So you wait. You excuse it. You understand. You rationalize. Because after 40, you don't want to react like you used to. You want to be calm, rational, balanced. But there's an uncomfortable truth no one really tells you. Some red flags don't appear suddenly. They appear slowly, polite, almost invisible. And by the time you notice, you're already emotionally invested. So let me ask you something. Did you really miss the signs? Or did you simply choose to believe this time would be different? There is a quiet reason why this keeps happening. And it has nothing to do with a lack of emotional intelligence, nor with naivety, nor with neediness. You are not naive. You are not weak. You are not desperate. But something inside you still responds to old patterns. In psychology this has a name, and it was deeply studied by John Bowlby. He called it attachment patterns. Emotional strategies learned very early in life. Ways a child learns to survive emotionally, to maintain closeness, to avoid abandonment. And these strategies rarely disappear. Your brain learned long ago how to interpret love. It learned to read signs of presence and signs of distance. It learned when to wait, when to insist, when to please, when to adapt to avoid losing someone. And that learning stays imprinted. The problem is that the brain does not only seek safety. It seeks familiarity. What feels known. What resembles something old. Even when that past was not healthy. Even when it carried anxiety. Even when it carried silence. The familiar feels comfortable. That is why something curious happens. When someone is fully available, clear, present, consistent, your emotional system sometimes hesitates, feels too calm, almost without tension. But when someone is unpredictable, something different happens inside you. A subtle restlessness appears, an emotional curiosity, a desire to understand that person, to decode their behavior, to make things work, to prove this time will be different. It is not love for drama. It is not a desire to suffer. It is your emotional system trying to resolve something old. Something that may have started very early, when closeness and insecurity came together. When affection and instability coexisted. When love also carried doubt. And your brain learned that language. So the signs appear. Vague responses. Cold messages. Delayed plans. Promises that never solidify. Small silences that feel strange. Small absences you notice. But something inside you explains them away. You say he is busy. That he is confused. That maybe he is going through something difficult. That every relationship requires patience. That maturity means knowing how to wait. That reacting too early might ruin things. That maybe it is just a phase. And the warning fades. But there is a quiet moment when truth appears. It arrives slowly. Almost like an inner whisper. Something is not aligned. Something is not whole. Something is not reciprocal. Your intuition senses it before your mind does. And when it does, the silence becomes heavy. You may believe each story was different. Different faces, different moments, different conversations. But there is a quiet detail that repeats. The same kind of emotional absence. The same kind of hesitation in someone's presence. And you begin to notice. At first everything feels promising. He shows interest. The conversation flows easily. There is chemistry. There is curiosity. There is that rare feeling of connection. And for a moment you think, maybe this time is different. But then small cracks appear. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that justifies leaving immediately. Just small inconsistencies. Small delays. Subtle shifts in energy. Little silences you can feel. And something inside you notices. Yet you don't react. You observe. You wait. You analyze. You try to understand the context. You try to be fair. You try not to project old wounds. And you give it more time. This is where the invisible pattern gains strength. Because while you try to be mature, you begin adjusting yourself. You say a little less than you feel. You ask a little less than you want. You tolerate a little more than you should. And the relationship slowly shifts its center. Almost unnoticed. You start taking up less space, waiting more for messages, reading more into silence, revisiting old conversations, trying to interpret mood changes, looking for signs of interest, hoping things return to the beginning. And emotional fatigue appears. Then a quiet thought emerges. Maybe I am asking for too much. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe he is just busy. Maybe I need more patience. Maybe mature relationships are like this. Maybe I should relax a little. And you continue. But deep down something inside you knows. This feeling is not new. This kind of doubt is not new. This mix of hope and unease. You have felt it before. In another story. With another person. In another moment of your life. And in that moment awareness begins to awaken. Maybe the issue is not only who appears. Maybe something about the dynamic repeats. Something subtle at the beginning. Something that seems small at first. But grows over time. Until it fills the entire emotional space. And when you notice, you are already inside again. And this is where the hardest question appears. Not about him, but about you. About what your heart recognizes. Before your mind is ready to admit it. Why do certain people awaken so much interest? Even when reciprocity is still unclear. That question changes everything. That if you're listening to this and something inside you is saying, this is exactly what I'm living, then you need to continue this journey with us. This is not just another video. It's a space of emotional clarity for women who no longer want to ignore the signals of their own heart. Here on our channel we talk about relationship discernment, emotional maturity, and inner peace after 40. So click the button right now and subscribe to our channel because every video helps you see more clearly who truly deserves, or doesn't deserve, a place in your life. And sometimes one truth at the right moment changes everything. The problem with ignoring warning signs is not only what happens in the relationship. It's what begins to happen inside you. Almost silently, almost imperceptibly at first, but deeply transformative over time. Because every time you ignore a warning, something inside you learns to doubt itself. And that is the real trap. At first it just feels like patience. You believe you're being mature, that you're avoiding impulsive reactions, that you're giving space, that you're respecting the other person's timing, that adult relationships require understanding. And you want to do things differently from the past. You want to do better this time. So you observe more, ask less, wait longer for replies, tolerate small emotional discomforts, justify behaviors that would once bother you, minimize certain attitudes, try to remain calm, even when something inside you feels uneasy. But something curious starts to happen. Your energy shifts. You begin thinking more about the relationship, analyzing details you would once ignore, trying to predict behavior, interpreting silence, measuring your words, and the relationship begins to occupy too much mental space. What once felt light starts demanding emotional effort. You wonder if you should say something, if you should wait a little longer, if you are misinterpreting things, if you are being too demanding, if you are seeing problems that aren't there. And doubt slowly grows. Over time a fatigue appears that you didn't expect. It is not physical fatigue. It is emotional. The feeling of constantly adjusting something. Constantly trying to maintain balance. Constantly trying to protect something fragile. Constantly trying not to scare the other person. And that becomes exhausting. Then a quiet question emerges. Why does something that should bring peace start bringing anxiety? Why does something that should expand your life start occupying too much of your mind? Why do you begin measuring your words when you once felt free to be yourself? Something isn't right. This is where many women become confused. They believe they must love more, be more understanding, have more patience, control their emotions better, avoid pressure, avoid asking too much, avoid scaring the other person. But that is not the solution. Because true emotional maturity is not tolerating everything. It is not accepting inconsistency. It is not adapting endlessly. It is not shrinking your needs. It is not pretending warning signs don't exist. Maturity also means recognizing limits and protecting your peace. And when you begin to see this, something inside you awakens. A calm clarity, almost like a light turning on slowly. Maybe the problem isn't loving too much. Maybe it's ignoring too many signals. And when that awareness arrives, everything begins to change. When this awareness begins to emerge, something shifts inside you. It is not a loud change. It is not an impulsive decision. It is something deeper, quieter, a new way of observing what happens around you, and especially within you. This is where true healing begins. The first healing step is learning to trust your emotional perception again. For a long time you were taught to doubt it, not to overreact, not to interpret too much, not to react too early. But your emotional perception exists for a reason. It is a protective system, and ignoring it always has a cost. When something feels too confusing, that is already important information. When actions do not match words, that is also information. When someone's presence creates more anxiety than peace, that is a clear signal. Not everything needs long explanations. Some truths are simple, and your intuition usually notices first. This does not mean reacting impulsively. It means observing honestly, without softening clear signs, without creating excuses for inconsistent behavior, without turning crumbs into hope, without convincing yourself that more patience will fix everything. Emotional discernment begins here, with the courage to see reality. The second healing step is stopping the attempt to earn reciprocity. Because real reciprocity does not need to be earned. It appears naturally, in presence, in interest, in consistent actions, in spontaneous care, in the clear desire to build something together. When someone truly wants to be in your life, it is not a constant mystery. It is not a complicated equation. It is not an unstable presence. It is not a series of confusing signals. There is clarity. There is intention. There is movement toward you. Many strong women make a silent mistake. They believe maturity means tolerating uncertainty longer, being more patient, more understanding, more tolerant. But true emotional maturity does the opposite. It shortens the time of self-abandonment. It protects your peace. This means observing early signals more carefully, not to create paranoia, but to protect your emotional space. You do not need months to recognize patterns. Small actions reveal a lot. Small gestures show priorities. Small silences also communicate something. And discernment learns to hear all of it. When you stop chasing reciprocity, something surprising happens. Your energy shifts. You become calmer, more present with yourself, less anxious for responses, less dependent on someone else's reaction, and more connected to your own peace. And it is exactly at that moment that something reorganizes within you. You realize you do not need to fight for attention. You do not need to prove your value. You do not need to convince anyone to stay. Someone who truly wants to walk beside you does not create an emotional labyrinth. And that clarity changes everything. Hey, if you got distracted for a moment, come back here with me now. Because what comes next is the most important part of this entire video. This is where everything starts to make sense. For a long time you believed you had to understand everything alone. Analyze every behavior. Interpret every silence. Decode every shift in energy. As if love were an emotional puzzle. As if trying a little harder would solve it. Waiting a little longer. Understanding a little more. But there is a limit to human effort. There is a point where the mind becomes tired. The heart becomes confused. And the soul begins to ask for silence. Not the silence of resignation, but the silence of listening. The moment when you stop trying to control everything and start looking inward. This is where something spiritual begins to happen. Not dramatically, not as an instant answer, but as a new perception. A quiet clarity, a sense that maybe some stories were not mistakes. Maybe they were directions. For a long time you called some endings failure. You called some separations rejection. You called some silence abandonment. But what if some of those endings were necessary interruptions? Moments when something was removed from your life, before it took even more space, before it drained even more of your peace. The Bible contains a curious statement about this. In Ecclesiastes 7:8 it says, "The end of a matter is better than its beginning." At first that sounds strange, because we all love beginnings. They bring hope. They bring expectation. They seem to promise happiness. But spiritual maturity reveals something different. Not every beautiful beginning deserves to continue. Not every promise deserves emotional investment. Not every connection must become destiny. Sometimes God's protection is not in the relationship that begins. It is in the relationship that ends. As some stories end early, to prevent deeper wounds later. Some people disappear, to create space for someone more aligned. Some doors close, to keep you from walking into a place that would drain your soul. And in that moment you do not understand. But time eventually reveals it. Maybe God wasn't taking something away from you. Maybe He was taking you away from something. From an unbalanced relationship. From a dynamic that would consume your peace. From a story where you would need to shrink who you are. From a bond where your presence would always be negotiable. And when that realization arrives, pain begins to change its meaning. Because then you start to see something deeper. The loneliness you have been feeling may not be the absence of love. It may simply be a space where your soul reorganizes. A season where your awareness grows stronger. A season where your discernment matures. A season where your peace becomes a priority. And when that happens, something new can begin. Maybe for the first time in a long time, you begin to look at your story with less guilt, less judgment, less harsh questions directed at yourself. You begin to realize that many choices were made with the heart you had at that moment, with the level of awareness you possessed, with the hope that still lived inside you, and that also deserves compassion. Because loving was never your mistake. Expecting reciprocity was not either. Believing in someone's potential was not naive. It was human. It was the natural desire for connection. It was the wish to build something meaningful. It was the courage to open your heart again. Even after disappointment, what changes now is not your ability to love. It is your ability to discern. To discern true presence. To discern consistent interest. To discern when words do not match actions. To discern when someone is emotionally available. And when someone is only temporarily passing through your life. That clarity changes everything. You begin to notice signals earlier. Not with fear. Not with excessive suspicion. But with calm maturity. With quiet awareness. With respect for your emotional time. With love for the peace you have built. And with the courage to protect it. Then something inside you relaxes. Urgency disappears. Anxiety softens. The need to prove your value fades away. You no longer need to convince anyone to stay. You do not need to compete for attention. You do not need to translate silence into hope. Your peace begins to occupy the center of your life. And when peace takes that place, your choices change naturally. You observe more. You listen to your intuition more closely. You allow time to reveal people's character. You notice who approaches with clarity. You notice who stays with consistency. And who disappears when ambiguity no longer has space. This does not mean loneliness disappears immediately. Some nights will still be quiet. Some days will still bring questions. Some moments will still awaken nostalgia for what might have been. But now something new lives within you. A quiet security. A clearer awareness. A peace that no longer depends on someone appearing. And that is where the story truly changes. Because you understand something profound. You are not late in life. You have not missed your chance to love. You are not falling behind while everyone else moves forward. You are simply learning to choose with awareness. And that awareness changes your destiny. Maybe the love you hope for has not arrived yet. But the woman who will recognize it is being born right now. More lucid. More whole. More connected to her own emotional dignity. And when that woman walks through life, love no longer needs to be chased. To find space. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to our channel right now. Here we talk about emotional maturity, relationship discernment, and the inner peace many women begin searching for after 40. Every video is an honest conversation about relationships, awareness, and healing. This channel might be exactly the space you needed to see your own story more clearly. So subscribe to our channel and continue this journey with us. And for you who stayed until the end of this video, write the word awareness in the comments. Consider it a quiet commitment to your emotional clarity. Every time you declare awareness, something inside you begins to realign. May your mind become clearer, your heart more protected, and your next choices guided by peace. Sometimes one intentional word is the beginning of a new path.